I'm speaking with Jeremy Green. Jeremy, you are an entomologist, and tell us where you're stationed with Clemson, please.
I'm stationed at the Edisto Research and Education Center in Blackville, South Carolina.
And y'all's responsibilities there are what?
Primarily agronomics, row crops. We deal primarily with row crops there.
As an entomologist, you said that your specialties are cotton and soybeans,
Correct.
two major crops for our
Yes.
farmers.
Yes.
And let's just start with cotton, because of course
Sure.
it's the South and
Yes.
king cotton. And we all used to think of the bow weevil. Of course, y'all got that under control
It's
a
no
long
longer
time.
an issue.
But what are the issues that you face with cotton now?
Well, in cotton, in terms of insects, we deal with a number of groups of insects. Thrips are tremendous early season pests for us. They're probably the most predictable insect pest that we have in cotton.
A lot of people aren't familiar with thrips, and it's one thrips and 100 thrips.
Yeah, one thrips is a thrips, and 100 thrips are.
And
100
tell
thrips.
people how their size and how
Very
many
small.
generations and how they feed.
Very small insects. In fact, they're probably what people call the no-see-ums when you're out in the field in the spring and you feel things on your arms. Those are the small little insects with rasping, sucking mouth parts kind of scraping at your skin. But these insects have multiple generations per year. They infest cotton in the seedling stage. They can cause stunting. They can cause yield loss in terms of stand loss. They're just the most predictable pests. We have them every year. We know we're going to have them every year. We use preventative materials for thrips. We have to use reactive materials for thrips as well. But it's an insect that has developed resistance to some of our commonly used materials.
Which isn't surprising because it has so many generations per year.
Yes, and we use these materials probably too much in cotton. They've developed resistance to that. We're seeing clear signs of that. We're losing products, EPA regulations and movements to protect the environment, which we should all do, but we're losing products and our control options are kind of dwindling there. But we're finding some new ways to combat thrips with planting date and some other cultural controls.
And that gets us to that integrated pest management where there are so many factors. We can look at cultural decisions and management decisions as well as chemical decisions.
Right.
And so tell me about the planting date, how you've managed to kind of fool these little boogers.
Well, in the last couple of years, we've looked at varying planting date and just saw the effect of planting date on thrips, their population development and injury to cotton.
So you knew that they were peaking at a certain time?
Well, we suspected it. Everybody suspected that thrips were an early season pest. You know, the earlier you plant, the more susceptible you are to thrips, and as it turns out, our data support that fully. It looks like you could use a cultural control technique to control thrips by planting a little later in the window. If you plant towards the end of May instead of planting towards the 1st of May, where it might still be a little cooler, you can get away with minimal control of thrips. And
cotton, I always hear, is a hot weather crop, so does it catch up pretty good if you plant it a little bit later once you start getting the right environmental conditions?
It will outgrow some of the injury from thrips, and that's probably part of the reason why planting in that particular window we see less thrips injury.
I was fascinated to hear that you had figured out a way to spray half the field and still get efficacious control. Talk a little bit about that and the advantages it gives to the grower.
Sure, yeah, a little later in the season for cotton, switching insect groups, talking about the stink bugs. We've found in some of our research, which is very difficult to do, by the way, this particular type of research, because it's not small plot controlled stuff, but strip spraying a field for stink bugs seems to be a way where we could save money, save time. And what I mean by that is spraying the outside border of a field and then spraying every other pass through the field and leaving some spray passes completely unprotected for that particular time, that spray application.
Well, it seems like that would just let them concentrate on those unsprayed areas.
Well, what happens with stink bugs, the adults fly into those fields and they make short little flights here and there, and they'll end up in a treated strip, they'll end up in an untreated strip, but the materials that we use for stink bugs give us some residual control, and there's enough residual control there where you're probably going to get a toxic dose as an adult stink bug bopping around in that field. And then the subsequent applications, you would switch. You would spray the untreated strips on subsequent applications. So I think that's a strategy that our growers should maybe take a look at.
And so first of all, they're using, what we all like to hear is that we're using less of a pesticide.
Yes.
Less of that chemical going into the environment.
Less time.
Mm-hmm. And then the fuel of tractors is a considerable factor, isn't it?
Sure.
So if
application costs. Sure.
Yeah.
So it's a real cost savings. It's a real environmental saving approach. I think it's a good deal. And I think we're going to work with more growers on maybe doing some border sprays, doing some strip sprays, and cotton for stink
So
bugs.
the thrips and the thrips and the stink bugs are the two major problems.
Those are our two major groups. Bollworm is a caterpillar insect that a lot of our technology, BT technology, seems
Controls
to
for this, yeah.
controls for this implant. GMO technology that's really good for the environment.
Yes.
It's really good for the growers' pocketbook. So those are the three major groups in cotton:
Okay.
thrips, bollworm, and stink bugs.
How about soybeans?
And soybeans, we're in pretty good shape in soybeans. We have a lot of insecticides for the insects that like to feed on soybeans, and there are a lot of insects that like to feed on soybeans. Defoliating pests, pests that feed on stems, and then pests that feed on the pods, the seeds. Those are the three broad groups of species that feed on soybeans. But we're in pretty good shape. One of the recent pests, the Kudzu Bug.
Everybody was because soybeans are a legume, as is kudzu. So we thought we would see some transference of activity.
Right, and we saw Kudzu Bug move off of kudzu and be a pest in
Ooh.
soybeans. And for a number of years, it was a tremendous economic problem. It's a nuisance pest for homeowners as well. Thankfully, and in addition to our great efforts of developing thresholds for that pest and coming up with a lot of solutions for our growers, thankfully Mother Nature helped us as well. We have a naturally occurring fungus called Bavaria bassiana that occurs in the soil. It recognized this insect, the Kudzu Bug, and it has exerted tremendous pressure
So
on reducing numbers.
that fungus is lethal to the
Exactly.
Kudzu bug.
It is.
And it was already here, and in small quantities, you think, and
It was
developed.
here, and the strain was amplified by the presence of Kudzu bugs. The cadavers provide room for the spores to produce, and we have enough inoculum in the soil in most locations now that Kudzu bugs really aren't an economic factor in soybeans for the most part.
And we don't get the calls from homeowners that we used to.
Right.
I think
That's part of the problem.
We
That's
are so
part-
excited.
yeah.
Yeah. Before you go, I'd like for you to explain a little bit the idea of economic thresholds and how that's changed. I sometimes look at old spray schedules for cotton, and I don't see how the farmer got to go home and have supper because
right.
every day there was something else to spray. But
Right.
now. How does scouting and looking at the field help the farmer make a decision? Is there a certain level of insect activity that's not going to actually reduce the cost, reduce their profitability?
Oh, yeah. Sure, yeah, it's critical. Back in the boll weevil days where you had to spray every 5 days, that's where you were on a calendar. That's where the growers didn't get home for supper, they had to spray. These days, we don't have pests that give us that kind of a problem in cotton. So we can look at populations, and we can look at sub-economic levels, and we can let those go. And we can spray only at economic levels of the pest. And that's kind of the basis of economic thresholds, treatment thresholds, based upon when is that economic injury level, and avoiding getting to that level by using a threshold set a little lower before you get there. So
But there's a certain amount that we can live with, and,
Sure.
and we don't feel like we have to have absolutely, completely
Exactly.
insect-free fields.
Exactly. For example, soybeans, we can stand a lot of defoliation in soybeans before it starts putting on pods. We can stand up to 30% of the leaves to be lost.
Good heavens.
So,
What?
yeah, so why try to protect
Yeah.
and keep all the leaf material there? In fact, some insect injury to crops is actually beneficial. It actually increases yields.
Because it turns on mechanisms
It does.
within the plant
It's
that
a
starts generating some of these
It's a
chemicals.
compensatory response by the
yeah.
plant, and you can actually boost yields with a little bit of insect feeding. So it's pretty cool.
These new drone technologies also, for you entomologists, sometimes can you analyze some of the information that you see if you see a part of a field?
Oh, yeah.
There's sometimes you can see things on a large field that you wouldn't necessarily see walking around the
Oh,
field.
yeah.
How is that going to help us, perhaps?
Yeah, I've got a couple of those UAVs, those
Yeah.
drones, and they're really, really cool tools. You can go up much higher than you normally would standing on top of a cotton picker or something like that, trying to look at what happened in the field. And yeah, you can see problem areas. You can use specialized cameras to denote regions in the field based upon NDVI or other measurements. I think that's going to be widely used in the future in agriculture.
And I think we're fortunate in South Carolina that our General Assembly that the people who support farmers have seen that we have put protections in so that farmers can use these drones in
Yes.
agricultural purposes,
that's
and we're very
fantastic.
grateful for that.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we are also grateful for people like you who are
Thank you.
obviously very excited about thrips, stink bugs, and other things
Right.
that some people shun,
Right.
and that you are down there making certain that our farmers who are trying to grow these crops are going to be able to do it successfully and with the minimal impact on the
Glad to
environment.
do it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.